Welcome back to Perspective. In this segment, we discuss all the business stories in Bazaar Buzz. And to discuss all the business news, we are joined by Manohar Manoj in our studios, an editor with Economy India. Welcome to Perspective, Mr. Manoj. Well, let's begin with the developments relating to the Eurozone crisis. European finance leaders have hammered out a €100 billion bailout plan for Spain, but of course the worst is not yet over for the European economy. Spain also said that it is not enough, and it feels humiliated and angry at this relief that has been offered. How are you looking at it?
Actually, so far European Union is concerned, the murmuring is going on for last 2 years. There was already economic depression in year 2008 and 9 when Obama was fighting election. And subsequently, we are hearing the economic crisis has not over. It is still continuing in European countries, and it is started from Greece.
Right.
You just talked about the Spain's economy. It's true. European Union has given loan to Spain to bail out its all liabilities. And but the Kaushik Basu, the chief economic advisor of Government of India, what he has said, that is very prominently.
Right.
That is in the end of the year 2014 and in the January of 2015. The chief bank of European Union, I am forgetting the name of the main central bank of European Union.
Right.
All banks which are related to that central bank, they all have to repay the all infrastructure finance which has been given by the central bank. Then problem will arise more, and chief economic advisor Mr. Basu has just warned Indian economy about that development.
Right.
So if that development took place, it will the country will have to be always alert about that.
Right. That's what he said, that Eurozone breakup could hit India also. But the question is, will the Eurozone break up?
It may be, because they are all developed economy, and we had already this kind of situation in 1930s. The whole Western world was suffering from great economic depression.
Right.
And then the President Roosevelt brought the New Deal policy, that had become very famous all over the world.
Right.
And the great economist Keynes propounded the general theory of employment and income, and then problem get averted. So this time the whole Western world, United States along with the European countries, they all are suffering from economic depression, and they don't have growth rate more than 3%.
Right.
They, since our economy has become internationalized, after new economic policy, we exposed our economy to the external factor, but still what I think, the Indian economy is not very much affected by the external factor.
Okay.
And though our export goes to European Union and US,
We are looking
20% of the export
also.
share goes to European Union and 10% goes to the US. It will some bit affect, but still our economy, the Indian economy is very much dependent on the domestic sector, domestic factor.
Right.
But we have to alert about the external situation also.
Right. In fact, we are already looking at other economies in Africa, towards the ASEAN countries as well. But how significant is Spain in the entire Eurozone crisis? Because many are saying that if this banking crisis is not contained, it could spread to the entire Europe, jeopardizing the whole Eurozone.
Spain is a part of the Western European country, it's a developed economy, but since the European Union has been one unit, so far the economy is concerned. So if one country get affected, the whole European Union will be get affected.
Right.
So India has to be alert about that. It's just a warning. It's not a very serious problem for our economy. Our economy has some other problem also, which has to be taken into account, which we should redress it for averting the future any happenings in on our economic front.
Right. Talking about our own economy and the problems that we are faced with, newspaper reports are saying that stalled economic growth is now showing in job crunch. Job cuts are clearly evident in labor-intensive industries, particularly such as textiles, which is India's second largest employer. How are you looking at it?
Actually, you have very rightly said, because textile is very much dependent on our export, and it is a very big part of our external economy. And if export get affected, rupee is being continuously depreciated, so definitely our textile sector will face this situation. And since it is the third largest employer in India, the textile industry, and we have 2 and 3 mega cities who are totally export oriented, like Trichy, like Ludhiana. So I think textile industry will face some problem.
Do you foresee some layoffs, etc., in the future? People being laid off, shown the door?
Not now, but there is some expectation there will be job crunch, because if your export get deteriorated, if there is not enough demand in the western part of the world, then the job crunch will be definitely happen.
Right. And other than the textile sector, what other sectors do you think are going to be hit by a job crunch?
The software sector, the BPO sector, it will be definitely affected by the external crisis. And apart from the BPO, we have and some other external sector, even the crude oil. Even crude oil, because we are already dependent on external market. 2/3 we import from the foreign country. If rupee gets depreciated, if Eurozone crisis gets continued, then the oil sector is already problematic. It will be further, it gets problematic.
Right. So this is going to be a serious challenge ahead for the government, something that the government will have to address. Let's move on to the crisis of Air India, which just refuses to go away. Newspaper reports are saying that plans we know are in place to recruit 100 more pilots, but many are saying that all the striking pilots of Air India could face the axe, and that orders have been given to sack all the 300 pilots.
Actually, this problem must be seen in the larger context. There was already merger between Indian Airlines and Air India, and the whole civil aviation industry is suffering under very big problem. The ATF is very costly, particularly in India. So the cost of the operation has become very high, and this public sector, Air India company, is also not in good shape. Already government has bailouts, some scheme. Government donated crores of rupees to run this Air India. And since the trade unionism has become so high in India, and the pilots went on strike, so now the government has just tightened its belt, and it's ready to hard bargain with them, because the other civil aviation player, they are also not in good shape. So this is high time for the government of India and the management of Air India to just tighten its belt and just tell them, if you want to work, then work, then otherwise you will be sacked.
Right.
So, but I think they will be taken back, but the government has tightened its stand only because they don't think about the future, any strike plan in the future.
Right, but we do know that a new business plan was announced for Air India about 10 days ago, and now the government toughening its position, taking a strong view that all the 300 pilots reportedly are going to be sacked. What does it mean for the future of Air India in the days to come?
I think they are very optimistic about hiring other bunch of pilots. That is why they have taken this stand. And but I think they will go to the court, because this is their fundamental right to strike against their employer. So since government of India has already taken its very hard stand on it, so in the future they will not think to go for a strike, because the Air India has to be revamped in a very big way. But since the whole civil aviation industry is running under a problem, the ATF is very costly, the cost is very high, there is a very little difference between cost and the output. So this whole civil aviation industry has to be taken into account, and already our civil aviation minister has taken a step, and he is discussing with his allies party with Mamata Banerjee and for inviting FDI in this sector. And I think this is very important because civil aviation is a very big infrastructure for our Indian economy. So it has to be taken into account, and I think there should be a comprehensive policy on civil aviation sector, because it requires to be look at and different sectors, like several taxes which have been imposed on this sector, the cost, the ATF, the operation cost, and to just make it competitive internationally. Otherwise the international player will come and they will tap the Indian market.
Right. Of course, these are some of the reasons, which is why many of the private airlines also are bleeding. But this has also sparked off a debate on whether Air India should be rescued at all or not. After all, this is an airline which is simply guzzling taxpayers' money.
Okay. Actually, there is no any other option left to the government. It has to run, because already Indian Airlines was merged with Air India, and there is no any big private player. The Jet is also suffering under problem. Kingfisher is already facing problems, and we have only Indigo Airlines that is performing well, but that is not very vast arena. So Air India has to be operated at any cost, and Government of India, that is why it donated financial assistance to Air India. But I think Air India should be fully debated, and it should be revamped, it should be restructured, and it should be made very strong public enterprise, public sector undertaking.
All right, let's move on to another story. According to a report submitted by the Planning Commission to the Union Cabinet on the Millennium Development Goals that we are yet to achieve, it says that India is way off its growth targets. And clearly a lot of ground has yet to be covered on many socio-economic indicators.
Yeah, that's very good concern presented by Planning Commission. Actually, we are witnessing just 7 to 8 to 9% growth rate in the first decade of 21st century, and it was very welcome sign. And country's economy was going on a very good path so far, reducing fiscal deficit is concerned. But the government did a very big mistake. That was just for getting the politically it was correct, but economically it was incorrect, and it was taken at the time of last Lok Sabha election, when government took 3 measures, and for taking those 3 measures, the fiscal deficit gets very high. It immediately jumped up by 2% of total GDP. The first decision was taken by this government, that was the waiver of farmer loan. That was estimated to be 70,000 crores. And the second was the implementation of 6th pay commission, that costed 1 lakh crore. And third was the unproductive, non-asset creating scheme like Manrega. And these all 3 schemes were so inflationary. The 4.5% GDP, the fiscal deficit was 4.5% of the GDP. It immediately rose to 6.5% of the GDP. And problem started from that time. And we have a very high inflation, very high food inflation, and followed with less agricultural productivity and high interest rate economy. The first term of the UPA was a very boom oriented. Right. The stock market was getting high, the bullion market was getting high, and the sugar became costly, the wheat became costly, all food grain items became very costly. Though the cheap money policy was operating at that time, later on RBI tightened the belt and it just restricted the money supply. Okay. So, but it has not been able to restrict the fiscal deficit because this government is still taking some populism measures, and it has already planned for the upcoming Food Security Act that will cost 1 lakh crore rupees, and then again the fiscal deficit will get will started to rise.
Right, but as of now the government seems determined to end this perception of policy paralysis and has set new infrastructure targets for itself. On that note, it's time for us to thank you, Mr. Manohar Manoj. We'll take yet another break right now. When we come back, a look at important sports news of the day. Stay tuned.